Let's look on the calendar. I don't know when the last one that I put out was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 months. Nearly 8 months since I last posted. And what have I got to show for it? Very little. Hey everyone, it's James at Amused Bouche, and first of all, welcome. This is the new Amused Bouche home. I know what you're thinking, it's been a long time since we've seen an Amused Bouche video. Yes, it has. But we're back. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for your continued support on the Instagram, Takeaway Tuesdays that you've been watching, or liking any of the pictures. Thank you so much. Please like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, because that helps massively, and leave a comment. As well, sort of just welcome us back with a little comment, if you would. Today we're autumn now. We've really hit autumn. We've got a lovely rusty colour out on the leaves on the trees, and I wanted to do a favourite of mine, which is a real autumn pleaser, and that's Treacle Tart. I really like Treacle Tart. Also, Harry Potter's favourite pudding, apparently. Today we're going to be making the pastry from scratch. I mean, why wouldn't we? We've got to try and challenge ourselves somehow. We're making a short crust pastry to put the treacle tart in, and it's going to be gooey, it's going to be lovely, and all of you out there are going to love it. There's not a lot to not love, it's just sugar, bread and eggs. So treacle tart, let's get to it. God, it's been a while since I've done one of these, so we'll dust off the old microphone, sling a duvet over the shoulders, and try and smash it out. Right, first up, we're gonna make the pastry. Now, the important thing here is to keep it cold. First thing we're gonna do is sieve 250 grams of plain flour into a large bowl. Follow that by 1/4 teaspoon of salt. To this, we'll add our fat. Now, I'm using unsalted butter, cubed up and straight from the fridge. The reason for this is that we're going to need to rub it into the flour so the little particles of butter are dissipated across a galaxy of flour in a bowl. You know, get my Brian Cox on. Once you've rubbed it between your fingers, you should be left with a texture that looks a little bit like clumpy sand. Wet clumpy sand? Yeah. From here, add 3 tablespoons of icing sugar just to sweeten the pastry. We're using icing sugar because it's really, really fine and you won't be left with grainy sugar in the pastry. And then we're going to add our wet ingredients. 2 egg yolks for a nice rich deep flavour, and then 3 tablespoons of ice cold water. Ice cold because remember, we're trying to keep everything as cold as possible. We don't want the butter to melt in the flour. No melty, no likey. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? Anyway, using a butter knife, we can start working the wet into the flour until it starts to clump together. Once you've done this for about 30 seconds, bring your hand in and squeeze the mixture until it comes together. Don't knead it. Don't push it and pull it about too much. You'll build up gluten. We don't want that, it'll be tough. We want nice, light, flaky pastry. Take a piece of cling film and wrap it up nice and tight so that no air gets to it, and then it goes back in the fridge. We're going to leave it in there for a minimum of 30 minutes so all the butter can set again and go all hard. Once it's chilled, bring it back out and we're going to roll it. I've got a fancy silicone rolling mat here, the sort of thing, you know, you get for Christmas and you don't really use until, well, right now, to be honest. Make sure that you use plenty of flour on the rolling pin. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to flour that rolling pin. Roll the pastry disc out until you get to about 12 inches. Once it's rolled out, we're going to take a loose bottom tart tin like this, and then we're going to oil it up. Make sure that there's plenty of oil all in the little nooks and crannies because we don't want the pastry to stick. Roll your pastry back onto the rolling pin like this, and then we're going to put it over the tin. Then we're going to pick the sides of the pastry up and just sort of lift it so that it drops down into the bottom of the pin. You don't want it to be tight because it will tear, so just give it as much as it needs, really. I'm going to take just a little bit of pastry here like this, and I'm just going to use it to help me push the other pastry into the corners of the tin. Now, this is where I made my mistake. I've started to cut away the sides of excess pastry here, and I don't really think it was a good idea. You know, there wasn't enough to cut away. If it was like loads and loads, then cut it away, but there was just enough that when it shrinks in the oven, which it will, then it means that, you know, it won't go right down to the base of the tin. Now we're going to put the tart tin with the pastry in it back in the fridge. You know, we've been touching it and working it. It's got a little bit hot and bothered. let it cool off, okay? Once it's cooled for another 20-30 minutes, bring it back out and prick the bottom with a fork. This is going to stop the pastry rising in the bottom of the tin. What we're going to do with the case is blind bake it. That's a fancy term that you've heard on cooking shows before, isn't it? Get your oven to a nice hot temperature of 200 degrees Celsius or gas mark 6. Let it really get nice and hot in there. Then you want to scrunch up some baking paper like this, lay it in the bottom of the tart tin, and we need something in the middle of the tin to weigh down the pastry. In this case, I'm using some ceramic baking beans. Again, another Christmas present, thanks Mum. But you don't have to use this, you could use some dried beans or rice. Get that into the oven for about 15 minutes and then bring it out. Remove all the beans and paper from the base of the tart and then put it back in the oven for another 10 minutes just to brown off. Once cooked, leave it in its case and on a cool rack so the temperature can drop right down. While it's cooling, let's make our filling. Into a bowl goes 400 grams of golden syrup, yes, a lot of sugar, but that's what we do on this show, 2 beaten eggs, and a zest of lemon. And then we're going to go in with 100 grams of breadcrumbs. Now I've used panko breadcrumbs here. I would say it's better to just leave a loaf of bread out overnight and then blend it up, but you know, I tried to cheat and did it work? No. Combine it all together and your breadcrumbs should start to absorb all the eggy, syrupy goodness. And that's exactly what we want. A quick pinch of salt brings out the flavour. Here's where we should be trimming up the sides. We trim up the sides of the tart case and then into the centre goes our filling. Get that back into your oven, which you've now turned down to 160 degrees Celsius or gas mark 4, and let it cook for about 40 minutes. We want the centre of the tart to be firm, but a slight wobble to it and a nice golden brown colour. Bring it out and let it cool down just a little, but not too much. You want all that warm gooiness to just ooze out of that tart, you dirty sod.
So there we have it, treacle tart. I mean, no, focus on the tart. God, the tart nearly fell off. Focus on the tart. In some ways it is focusing on the tart. Crispy pastry, a nice gooey center, and I want it. I want to try it.
Do you want it? You're dying for it.
Put a little bit of creme fraiche on there as well, just to cut through the sweetness. Oh, that is very, very nice. That pastry is super flaky. You're gonna be nervous of it. I was, but I would say stick with it. Make sure you keep it cold. Just keep the pastry cold all the time. It's crisp now, it's falling apart when I cut through it. I tell you what, if that's Harry Potter's favorite, then Expecto Patronum. Expecto Patronum. Is that a thing? Is that a thing? I hope you enjoyed that. Please give the video a like and comment as well. Drop us a comment, let us know what you think. When was the last time you had treacle tart? Is there another sort of winter autumny pudding that you prefer to treacle tart? Let me know below. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel. I shall see you next time for another sort of autumny dish. See you later. Cheers, I'm getting on this now.